European Union leaders and Turkey have agreed in principle to a plan to confront the current migration crisis, but they need more time to work out the details. A last-minute call by Ankara for more money and visa-free travel to Europe in return for its help came too late for a full assessment.
Prime Minister confirmed Turkey's commitment to accept the rapid return of all migrants coming from Turkey to Greece that are not in need of international protection. The EU will support Greece in ensuring comprehensive, large-scale and fast-track returns to Turkey. All the above-mentioned decisions send a very clear message that the days of irregular migration to Europe are over.
The deal would see the return to Turkey of Syrians who don't qualify for refugee status, and in return the resettling in Europe of an equal number of Syrian refugees.
Our objective is to discourage illegal migration, to prevent human smugglers, to help people who want to come to Europe through encouraging legal migration in a disciplined and regular manner.
While agreeing to take back migrants who don't qualify for asylum to alleviate the situation in Greece, Turkey's Prime Minister is asking for a doubling of EU aid to €6 billion. But Greece also wants the bloc to speed up the process of relocating asylum seekers throughout the EU.
The United Nations High Commission for Refugees says it has concerns about the EU's proposed agreement to solve its migrant crisis. The Commission said the deal on the table lacked balance, had all the hallmarks of a quick fix, and would be a breach of international law.
Collective expulsion of foreigners is prohibited under the European Convention of Human Rights, so an agreement that would be tantamount to a blanket return of any foreigners to a third country is not consistent with European law, is not consistent with international law.
Meanwhile, the Austrian Chancellor Werner Faymann voiced his doubts, saying relying on Turkey may not be the best option in the long run. It is an advantage to organise border defence with Turkey, but you can't rely on that permanently. That's why, parallel to that, we need to be able to organise border defence and the migrant crossing hotspots in such a way which we have often thought about in European-wide solutions, sometimes decided upon, but not always enacted, across Europe. But Germany's Angela Merkel was upbeat about Turkey's offer to take back all migrants who leave its shores for Europe in return for more money, faster EU membership talks, and visa-free travel for its citizens. While EU leaders and Turkey continue to thrash out a deal on the migration crisis, refugees on the ground on the Greek-Macedonian border are angry and disappointed with the progress of the talks. As they wait stranded in a waterlogged refugee camp, some accuse their leaders of using them as pawns.
We are the playing cards. No one looks to us as a humankind. We have a dreams, we have a life, we have a children. No, they are looking for us as money, as numbers.
Of course, that make us feel disappointed. You know, most of people here have a hope that they will open the borders, at least for those people stuck here in the border. But finally they said no way to go through these borders. This makes us feel so bad, angry.
Meanwhile, Macedonian security forces arrested 4 migrants from Afghanistan who attempted to cross from Greece in a field 5 kilometers from Idomeni. The 4 were escorted back to the border. Police say a number of migrants have been trying to cross in areas where there is no fence.
There's less police pushing people back.
A deadly interruption during a live TV broadcast. 2 civilians, including a young child, have been killed in southern Turkey after rockets were fired over the border from Syria. Reports from the Turkish town of Kilis say up to 8 rockets landed, all fired from a Syrian region controlled by ISIL, the group calling itself Islamic State. The dead are said to be a woman in her 50s and a 4-year-old boy. At least 2 other people were injured. Security sources said the Turkish military immediately returned fire. It's not the first time southern Turkey's been hit by cross-border fire, and while a partial truce is now in place in Syria, it's not put a stop to violence, especially since it doesn't apply to ISIL or the al-Qaeda-affiliated al-Nusra Front.
A minute's silence in the Malaysian parliament to mark the 2nd anniversary of one of the world's greatest mysteries in aviation history. Relatives of the 239 people on board Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 have also held a demonstration in Beijing. This relative says, "We don't know if they're alive or dead, if they're well or not. We're incredibly worried. We all have anxiety, phobias and depression. Our purpose of coming here is to pray for them. If they're alive and whatever place they're in, we hope to pray for their safety." Wreckage believed to be from the airliner was found on a beach in Mozambique last week and is being sent to Australia for further examination.
You can't go back. No, I'm only kidding.
The Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto says his country will not pay for Donald Trump's proposed wall along the US and Mexico border and likened the Republican candidate to Hitler and Mussolini. There have been episodes in human history, unfortunately, where these expressions of this strident rhetoric have only led to very ominous situations in the history of humanity. That's how Mussolini got in. That's how Hitler got in. Peña's comments were the most critical by a foreign leader of Trump, who recently compared his wall to the Great Wall of China.
The wall is 13,000 miles long. We need 1,000 miles. And we have all of the materials. We can do that so beautifully. And this is going to be a serious wall.
Peña said instead of building walls, he wanted to build bridges of understanding between the two countries in a mutually respectful way. Bangladesh's highest court has upheld the death penalty of one of the leaders of the Jamaat-e-Islami party. Qasim Ali has been accused of war crimes during the 1971 independence war with Pakistan. According to official figures, 3 million people were killed and thousands of women raped during the conflict. Demonstrators took to the streets in support of the court's decision. 4 opposition politicians, including 3 leaders of Jamaat-e-Islami, have already been convicted by the tribunal and executed. The party's leaders have accused the tribunal of targeting Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's opponents.
After North Korea's latest threats of nuclear strikes against the US and South Korea, more sanctions have been announced by the South. Seoul says 40 individuals and 30 entities suspected of having links to North Korea's weapons program are being targeted. And shipping is also affected. This minister says we're completely banning foreign vessels that have stopped at a North Korean port in the past 180 days. We're also continuing the measures prohibiting the vessels of third countries from sailing the sea route between South and North Korea. South Korea is also calling off a pilot project that saw Russian coal being exported to South Korea through a port in the north. Pyongyang made new threats as the US and the South began large military exercises.
A disqualified dentist is on trial in France, accused of mutilating dozens of his patients. Dutchman Mark van Nierop is facing charges of intentional violence and fraud. More than 50 patients had complaints such as having healthy teeth removed, abscesses, recurring infections and misshapen mouths. One of his patients says, "We are physically ruined because of the suffering, and we are morally destroyed because we've been scammed. We paid a lot of money to reach a point where we can't even have the injuries repaired," she says. This lawyer says, "For my clients, we're hoping for some sort of explanation about how Mr. Van Nierop was allowed to behave in this way for so long, how things became so serious. Today we've no explanations. As part of the recovery process, it's essential to first understand." Perhaps he will show remorse, but we just want to understand, he says. The trial is expected to last about 10 days, with the ruling expected shortly after that. If found guilty, Nierop could be fined up to €370,000 and jailed for up to 10 years.